For this video, I want to bring Roland Barthes' essay, The Poor and the Proletariat, into conversation with Alexandra Kleeman's novel, Something New Under the Sun, and look at how both these works end with an image of either the pseudo-bourgeoisie or the bourgeoisie imprisoned, alienated, and isolated by architecture of their own divination. So the first passage I want to talk about is where Roland Barthes writes about Charlie Chaplin at the end of his movie Modern Times, in which his character has been imprisoned but thinks he's living in like a bourgeois hotel and doesn't understand the gravity of the situation. It's a bit of a longer quote, but it is only one sentence. Bart writes, quote, "For instance, Charlie Chaplin is in a cell, pampered, lives there according to the ideal of the American petit bourgeois, ellipses, but his delightful self-satisfied posture discredits this ideal completely, so that it's no longer possible for anyone to take refuge in it without noticing the new alienation it contains." End quote. It's on page 39. And the dramatic irony here is that the audience knows that Charlie Chaplin's character is not a position to be middle class or to even really play at being middle class, because prisons are not where we put the bourgeois. It's not the realm of the bourgeois. And yet, if we think about Jay and Brenda in Alexandra Kleeman's novel, they kind of want to imprison themselves. We find out towards the end of the novel that, what they wanted all this money for was to kind of retreat from the world and live in a bunker in New Zealand. And I'm going to read a brief passage from where Jay is articulating the schematics of their plan to his wife. Kleeman writes, and Jay says, "I'd rather keep my eyes on the prize. 75 acres of pristine farmland an hour outside Wellington, an off-grid bunker with a hot tub and indoor lap pool fully equipped with solar panels and reverse osmosis filtration system for the well water." End quote. This is page 338. So similar to Modern Times, to Charlie Chaplin in Modern Times, Jay and Brenda see the middle class ideal as somehow being in a prison, although it's a prison of their own making. So they want to contain themselves underground, and there's this contradiction, and they somehow see that they're going to have these pristine fields and somehow be farming them or having someone farm them and living this pastoral fantasy while also being underground, which seems to acknowledge that something big has happened in the world, presumably ecological, but could also be war related, in which they've had to retreat from reality and they're like filtering their water. So they think that somehow they're going to be free, living the pastoral dream, but also contained. And Charlie Chaplin likewise somehow sees himself as being free because he's bourgeois and the world's at his fingertips, but he's also in prison. There's a similar contradiction here, except that Jay and Brenda are not pseudo-bourgeois. They are, if anything, super-bourgeois. They have fully grasped the means of production within their trade as producers, and it's as though they legitimize what Charlie Chaplin's film laughs at. And I wonder if this is a comment, this could be some kind of comment on the movement from modernity to post-modernity, or if we want to consider ourselves in post-modernity. So in Charlie Chaplin's time, says Bart, his film is making it obvious that the alienation of the bourgeois dream. The bourgeois dream, he's saying, is too big a side effect to ignore. But in our time, in Kleeman's time, alienation isn't a side effect of the middle class dream. It is the dream. It makes me think of how the architecture of the middle class has changed from allowing mobility to allowing withdrawal. So if we think about how architecture and systems designed to kind of contain the poor or the lower classes have been like prisons, what they used to call poorhouses, debtors' jails, or even in Shakespeare's times when the poor lived in areas that were heavily subject to quarantines, whereas the rich and the developing middle class could move around. Now suddenly we see this image of the rich who want to withdraw from the world rather than live in it. So people want to live in gated communities. They want food delivered to their door. The uber rich are living in super yachts, not even trying to travel to different places, but just living off the grid in the way Jay and Brenda want to do on a lower level. And I do think it feels like a comment on the movement towards alienation as a goal in and of itself.